Everyone laughed at her for choosing a crippled man, a man on wheelchair with no money, no fame, just a wheelchair. They called her a fool. Her friends said she's insane. Her stepmother called her a shameless girl. But when the truth was revealed on their wedding day, everyone was shocked. This is the love story no one ever saw coming. If you're just tuning into this channel, please subscribe to our channel and give this story a thumbs up. Also tell us where you're watching from. In the heart of bustling Lagos mainland, where the air buzzed with the constant hum of kiki napeps and impatient danfo horns, there stood a humble tailor shop nestled between a buka and a hair salon. The faded sign read, "Ngozi's touch of perfection, custom tailoring with love." And that was no empty slogan. Inside that modest shop worked Ngozi, a young woman in her 20s with eyes that held both strength and softness. Her hands, calloused from years of threading needles and pressing seams, moved like poetry over cloth. Every outfit she made had character. Every stitch was a silent testament to her devotion, not just to her craft, but to excellence. Customers from all over Surulere, and even as far as Ikeja, came for one reason: Ngozi's touch. Brides trusted her with their gowns. Working-class women leaned on her for their church clothes. Market women brought torn wrappers for mending, and she handled them with the same grace she gave lace. Even men, bankers, tailors, engineers, often stood outside waiting just for fittings. "She is too good," they would say. "Her hand blesses every clothes she sewed," another would add. Yet inside her home, a small flat she shared with her stepmother and her mother, Ngozi received no such praise. Her stepmother, Madame Ajoma, treated her like the thread under her feet. She was the second wife of Ngozi's late father and had made it her mission to erase anything tied to his memory, including Ngozi. "Ngozi, come sweep this place before your useless customers start coming again," Ajoma barked one early morning. Ngozi, who had just finished ironing a customer's lace blouse, didn't respond. She quietly folded the blouse, set it aside, and picked up the broom. She had learned that silence was her most powerful answer. It was dignity. Her mother, now older and weaker, stayed mostly in her room these days. "My daughter," she would whisper whenever she saw Ngozi, "don't let wickedness change your heart." And she didn't. Each morning, Ngozi opened her shop at 7 a.m. sharp. She swept the front, arranged her thread cones by color, tested her sewing machine, and prayed under her breath, "God, bring me good customers and bless the work of my hands." She never knew who would walk in next, sometimes a demanding bride, other times a quarrelsome trader. But she served them all with one thing: respect. Lagos, for all its chaos, recognized quality when it saw it, and Ngozi's reputation grew, even if she remained quiet, modest, and unassuming. But envy has a way of growing in the hearts of the insecure. One evening, as Ngozi returned home from a long day, her stepmother sat outside, gossiping with neighbors. "She dey use charm attract customers," Ijoma said loudly. "All these her fake smiles, she go still fall one day." The neighbors laughed awkwardly, unsure whether to agree or walk away. Ngozi walked past them with her head high, holding a bag of fabrics close to her chest. She didn't know it yet, but fate was already sewing something remarkable into the fabric of her life. Not just success, not just recognition. Love. And it would come in the most unexpected form. A man in a wheelchair, carrying a folded shirt and a heart full of quiet hope. It was a sweltering Tuesday afternoon in Lagos, the kind where even the air seemed tired. The sun blazed mercilessly over Surulere, and the smell of roasted corn, sweat, and impatience clung to the streets like perfume. Inside her shop, Ngozi dabbed her forehead with a handkerchief as the fan rotated sluggishly from one corner of the room to the other. She was seated at her sewing machine, carefully pressing the neckline of a blouse for one of her choicest customers, a church deaconess who insisted that even her underlining be flawless. As the presser foot rose and fell, Ngozi's concentration was unshaken, until the shop bell jingled softly. Clink, clink. She looked up casually, expecting to see one of her regulars, but instead her eyes met something unexpected. A man in a wheelchair, slowly willing himself through her narrow door. He paused halfway, as though unsure whether he was truly welcome. Ngozi blinked. not out of shock but of curiosity. She stood up immediately. "Good afternoon, sir," she said warmly, walking toward him. "Please come in well. Mind the small step." The man gave her a surprised look as though unused to being greeted with such kindness. Most people hesitated around him. Some gave pitying stares. Others avoided his eyes altogether, like his presence embarrassed them. But not Ngozi. She quickly moved one of her stools out of the way, making space for his wheelchair beside the main fitting mirror. "This place small, Shah," she said playfully, "but not home for everybody." The man smiled slightly. "Thank you. My name is Emeka." "Ngozi," she replied, offering her hand. He shook it gently, his grip soft but firm. Then he unfolded a neatly pressed Onkorako fabric and held it up. "I want to sew a short-sleeved shirt. I heard you're the best tailor in this area." Ngozi smiled modestly. "Well, Lagos people like to talk. Let me try and live up to the hype." As she reached for her measuring tape, she noticed how carefully Emeka moved. His hands were stringy and graceful, but his legs looked limp, unused. She didn't flinch or frown. She simply got to work. "Please stretch out your arms," she said. He complied. "Chest, 41 inches, she muttered to herself. "You work out?" He chuckled. "I try. Small, small." She smiled. "It shows." Emeka was quiet for a while, watching her work. Her fingers were quick and skilled, but what struck him most was her composure. She treated him like any other customer. No awkward pauses, no forced politeness, just genuine professionalism. "I've been to 3 tailors before you," he said suddenly. She looked up. "They either overcharged me or acted like they were doing me a favor." Ngozi raised an eyebrow. "Because of your condition?" He nodded. She sighed and shook her head. "That's not fair. Nobody is doing anybody a favor here. You're a customer and I'm a tailor. Simple." Her tone was light, but Emeka felt the weight of it. It had been a long time since someone spoke to him like that, with normalcy. After she finished taking his measurements, she noted down his number and promised to call when the shirt was ready. 3 days, she said. "But if NEPA disgraced me, maybe 4. He laughed, a genuine one this time. "Thank you, Ngozi." "You're welcome, Emeka. Please come back and try malt and puff puff next time. That's how I keep my customers loyal." He smiled and wheeled himself out. As she watched him leave, something stirred quietly in her. Not pity, not even admiration, just a warmth she hadn't felt in a while. A connection. Outside, Emeka paused on the street corner. The Lagos crowd rushed past him as usual. Hawkers yelling prices, Okada men swerving without mercy, 2 conductors arguing over change. But inside him, something had shifted. He hadn't gone to that shop just to sew a shirt. He'd gone because someone had mentioned the name Ngozi to him weeks ago. Someone in passing who said, "That girl? She dey different. She no dey look people like others." And now he believed it. She didn't stare at his legs. She didn't rush him. She didn't pity him. She saw him. And that alone was enough reason to return. It had been 3 days since Emeka's first visit, and Ngozi was seated at her sewing machine, putting the final touches on his shirt. The fabric, a vibrant blend of navy and orange patterns, had come alive under her fingers. She admired the finished product, then folded it carefully and placed it in a clear wrapper with a handwritten note tucked inside. Just as she set it aside, the shop bell jingled. Clink, clink. Ngozi looked up with a smile that seemed to know who it would be. And there he was again. Emeka, wheeling himself into her space like he belonged there. "You came early," she said. "I couldn't wait," he replied. She laughed and reached for the wrapped shirt. Well, the tailor never disappoints. He took it, opened it slowly, and studied the craftsmanship. "Wow," he whispered. "This is perfect." Ngozi's face lit up. "I told you, no one leaves my shop without looking their best." Then, without waiting for him to ask, she walked to her small fridge in the corner and brought out a chilled malt drink and a pack of Gala. "You look like you need a refreshment." Emeka blinked. "You didn't have to." "I wanted to," she interrupted gently. He took the drink, unsure of what touched him more, the kindness or the ease with which she offered it. Most people hesitated before offering him anything, like his disability might stain their generosity. They talked for almost an hour that day about Lagos traffic, about fuel scarcity, about music. He told her how he loved the saxophone and used to play in his university band before his accident. She told him about her dream of owning a big fashion studio someday. I want people to walk in and say, "That's the Ngozi collection." Not just Taylor, she said, eyes dreamy. Emeka smiled. You'll get there. You're already halfway there with your hands. That became the first of many visits. He returned the next week, not to sew, but to bring her lunch. He returned again with a new fabric, saying, "Let's see if you can beat your last masterpiece." And again with a small book of sketches she could use for inspiration. Soon it wasn't about sewing anymore. It became about two souls finding peace in each other's company. Yet Lagos, as always, had something to say. The whispers began in the market stalls. "Have you seen Ngozi and that cripple again? She don dey carry him like handbag. If not me, I no fit even sit near him." Ch. One afternoon, as they sat under the mango tree beside her shop, sipping zobo and laughing about a loud customer who had demanded a spiritual fitting, a group of boys passing by snickered loudly. "Wife of wheelbarrow," one shouted. "Madam Handicapped Tailor," another mocked. Emeka looked down, his jaw tightening. Ngozi's face stiffened, but she turned to him and said, "Don't listen to them." "I'm used to it," he muttered, but his eyes betrayed the sting. She reached across the small plastic table and touched his hand. "No, you're not. No one should be." He looked up at her. "Why are you not ashamed of being seen with me?" She smiled softly. "Why would I be? You're the only person in this town who makes me laugh from the belly." "But," she leaned closer, "Emeka, listen to me. People mock what they don't understand. If they knew what kind of heart you have, what kind of man you are, they'd beg to sit in your presence." He swallowed hard, then said quietly, "You keep saying one day I'll walk again. Why?" "Because I believe in you," she said. "Even if you never walk, you're still the strongest man I know." Silence passed between them, heavy with emotion. Emeka looked at her, really looked, and for the first time in a long time, he felt like a man. Not an object of pity, not a broken version of who he once was. A man, and she saw him. They continued meeting almost every other day, sometimes for lunch, sometimes for silent companionship. Ngozi never stopped working. She'd stitch while Emeka read aloud to her from old novels or helped organize her customer records. They became a fixture in the area. People stared. Some muttered. Others giggled. But Ngozi was immovable. One day as they walked, her pushing his wheelchair along a quiet side street, he asked, "What if I stay like this forever? Will you still sit with tied to me under this tree?" She didn't even pause. "Then I'll buy a bench with wheels so we can both roll through life together." Emeka laughed, a deep, genuine laugh that echoed down the street, and somewhere silently, the threads of destiny stitched a little tighter. What began as a tailoring transaction had become a friendship that defied gossip, pity, and scorn. It was the kind of bond no one understood. Not yet. But Lagos was about to learn that the heart chooses what eyes can never see. The sun had begun its slow descent over Lagos when Emeka rolled into Ngozi's shop one Friday evening. The fading light filtered through the slatted wooden windows, casting golden streaks across the room. Ngozi sat cross-legged on the floor, surrounded by scattered pieces of fabric, matching sleeves to bodices and humming to herself. She looked up and smiled. "You're late today." Emeka smiled back. "Traffic jam near Ojuelegba. You know Lagos won't let you be great." Ngozi laughed, brushing threads off her wrapper. "Come and sit here," she said, patting the mat beside her. "Today is too hot for chair and table friendship." Emeka wheeled himself over, and she helped him lower onto a pillow on the floor. She brought him a glass of cold water, then sat beside him, shoulder to shoulder. They sat in silence for a while, just listening to the street noise outside, the honking donfos, vendors shouting, and distant music from a neighbor's speaker. Ngozi was the first to speak. "Sometimes I wish I could just disappear from all of this for one day. No customers, no measuring tape, no people talking. Emeka tilted his head. Where would you go? Maybe somewhere by the beach, just sand, wind, and quiet. He was quiet for a long moment. Then slowly he pulled a small box from his pocket. Ngozi, he said, voice suddenly low and trembling. She turned to look at him, her smile fading as she noticed the seriousness in his eyes. I've thought about this 1,000 times, rewritten it in my head over and over, but no matter how I say it, it always comes back to the same thing. He opened the box. Inside was a simple, elegant gold ring. Ngozi gasped softly. I know I'm not the man people expect you to be with, he continued. I know they talk. I know they laugh. I know you hear them. But you stayed. His voice cracked slightly. You didn't see a wheelchair. You saw me. And you loved me. Not for what I could give you, but for who I am. Ngozi's hands trembled. Her eyes welled with tears. So I'm asking, Emeka whispered, will you marry me? There was no hesitation. Yes, she said breathless. Yes, Emeka. 1,000 times, yes. She took the ring and slid it onto her finger with shaky hands. They embraced tightly, sitting there on the tailor shop floor as the world outside Lagos moved on, unaware that something divine had just been sown between two imperfect souls. But the storm came quickly. That same night, Ngozi gathered her closest friends, Kioma, Amara, and Bisola, at a roadside eatery not far from Ohota to share the news. The joy in her voice was unmistakable. I said yes. He proposed today, she beamed, showing them the ring. For a moment, silence. Then Kioma leaned back, arms folded. You're serious, she asked, brows arched. Ngozi nodded. Bisola exchanged glances with Amara and burst into laughter. You want to marry Emeka, as in wheelchair Emeka. Ah, Ngozi, tell us ain't a prank. Ngozi's smile faltered. What's funny? Amara cleared her throat. Ngozi, we've watched you struggle. You deserve a man who can take care of you, stand beside you at the altar, not roll beside you. Ngozi looked at her friends, eyes wide with disbelief. So, because he can't walk, he's not worthy of love? Not that, Kioma said. But think now, you're young, beautiful, talented. You could marry a banker, even a pastor, not a cripple. The words stung like knives. Ngozi rose slowly, her voice calm but sharp. You know what's worse than being in the wheelchair? Having working legs but a crippled heart. The table went silent. Emeka has done more for me than any man ever has. He listens. He respects me. He believes in me. Bisola scoffed. Na love we go chop. Ngozi took a deep breath. Then go and marry your rice. She walked away from the table with tears in her eyes but fire in her chest. The moment she stepped out into the street, the night breeze wrapped around her like comfort. She had made her choice. When she returned home later that night, she sat beside her mother in their dimly lit sitting room and whispered the news. Mama, Emeka asked me to marry him, and I said yes. Mama's eyes widened, then softened. The man in the wheelchair? Yes, her mother held her hands gently. Do you love him? With all my heart, Mama smiled. Then he is welcome. It's not legs that hold a home together, it is love. Tears ran down Ngozi's cheeks. Thank you, Mama. But before the moment could settle, Madame Ijoma emerged from her bedroom doorway, arms crossed and voice loud. Of course! I knew it. This girl has finally disgraced this family. You see yourself? You want to marry cripple? Chineke, my own daughter is here, ripe for marriage, and you're dragging disability into this house. Mama Ijoma, please. Ngozi's mother started. Don't mama me, Ijoma barked. I said it. This girl go carry curse come this house one day. She thinks say na love? Mshu Ngozi will never amount to anything good. Ngozi stood still, calm, unshaken. Say what you like, she said softly. I'm not marrying for you. I'm marrying for my peace, for my joy, and you'll watch me wear that white gown, with or without your blessing. She turned and walked into her room, her shoulders high, her heart heavy but sure. Outside, Lagos buzzed on, unaware of the war she'd just chosen to fight. But deep inside her spirit, she knew she had chosen right. The wedding date had been fixed. It was to be held in 3 weeks' time on a Saturday morning in a small Anglican church in Surulere, followed by a simple reception at a rented hall nearby. Nothing extravagant, nothing showy, just love, or so Ngozi thought. But the moment the wedding announcement filtered into the streets of Lagos, it was as if a match had been dropped into dry grass. Rumors caught like wildfire. She say she dey marry crippled man. This one no normal. Dem don do her jazz. Na spiritual attack be this. Fine girl like that, na pity dey worry am. And the worst of them all came from her own neighborhood. Each time she walked past the women selling vegetables near her gate, their voices dropped into deliberate whispers. "Na so life don humble her," one would mutter. "Make she no go born children, we no fit waka," another would add with a sly laugh. Ngozi heard it all, felt it like stones under her feet. One morning as she swept the front of her shop, 2 young boys walked past mimicking a limp. I'm Emeka," they teased, laughing hysterically. Ngozi dropped the broom and turned to face them, her eyes blazing. "May your future not be mocked like this," she said sharply. The laughter stopped instantly. The boys ran off. She stood there, breathing hard, fists clenched. But after a few moments, she picked up her broom and continued sweeping, like nothing happened. Because in truth, the real storm wasn't on the street. It was inside her home. Her stepmother had declared war. Madame Ijoma now refused to speak to her unless it was to insult her. "Ngozi, when you enter that man's house, don't come back here. We no want crippled spirit in this compound." Her daughter Neka joined in the mockery. "I just thank God say nah, you disgrace reach. Me, I no go fall reach that level." Ngozi no longer responded. She had built an invisible wall around her heart, stone on stone, insult after insult, until nothing could pierce her calm. But at night, in the silence of her small room, she cried into her pillow. Not because she doubted her choice, but because it hurt to be hated for loving right. Only her mother remained her refuge. Every night they would sit together in the dim kitchen as the lantern hissed. "Ngozi," her mother would whisper, gently rubbing her back. "Don't let shame steal your joy. You are a good girl. And that man, Emeka, I see the way he looks at you, like your light. I just want peace, Mama." "You will have it. Even Jesus was mocked. But love has a way of silencing mouths." Ngozi nodded, wiping her tears, silently praying her mother would live long enough to see her walk down the aisle. Emeka, on his part, noticed the growing tension, but he never once mentioned it. Instead, he focused on preparing for the wedding in his own quiet way. He ordered a custom white agbada and had his best friend, Tony, handle logistics for the ceremony. He'd even arranged a small gospel choir to surprise Ngozi at the church. Every time they met, he reminded her of the most important thing. That day isn't about what people see. It's about what we know. "But Emeka," she said one evening, "don't you ever feel ashamed? All these people mocking you?" He paused, then he smiled. "Ngozi, I've sat in this chair for years. People laugh, people pity, people stare. But none of that has ever mattered until you. You gave me a new reason to care again." She leaned against his shoulder and whispered, "I don't care if we have only 10 people at the wedding. As long as I walk in and see your face waiting at the altar, my joy will be full." But there was one thing Ngozi didn't know. One detail Emeka had buried deep beneath his calm smiles and soft words. He wasn't planning a simple wedding. While Ngozi stitched her dress by hand, Emeka made quiet calls, arranged for a private fleet of cars, reserved a luxury ballroom on Victoria Island under a different name, hired the best decorators in Lagos, booked a live band. He had instructed Tony, "Let her think it's small. I want her to walk in that morning and be shocked. She deserves a miracle." Tony laughed. "Guy, you want to kill her with surprise." "No," Emeka replied. "I want to thank her with the truth." Back in Surulere, Ngozi sat alone in her shop the night before the wedding, sewing the final beading onto her white gown. It was simple, modest lace, no train, no pearls. But it was hers. Every stitch carried hope. Every thread was love. She looked at the finished dress and smiled. If this is the only beautiful thing in my life tomorrow, I will still wear it with pride. And just as she reached for her needle again, a gust of wind blew through the open window, rustling the curtain. Ngozi paused, closed her eyes, and whispered, "Let tomorrow be beautiful." She didn't know yet that Lagos had never seen the kind of wedding her love story was about to birth, or that the man everyone mocked was about to stand. The sun rose gently over Lagos that morning, casting a golden hue across the sky like a divine brushstroke. Birds chirped, danfos honked, life rushed on. But in one small home in Surulere, time had slowed down. Ngozi stood in front of a cracked mirror, dressed in her handmade gown. Her hands trembled slightly as she adjusted the lace neckline. The dress was simple but elegant, with delicate beadwork stitched into the bodice and a soft ivory sash tied around her waist. She had braided her own hair the night before, tight cornrows wrapped into a low bun, decorated with tiny white clips. Her face, fresh and glowing, needed no makeup. Her beauty came from within, the kind that grief, struggle, and dignity had shaped. Her mother sat in the corner, eyes misty with joy. "You look like an angel," Mama whispered. Ngozi turned. "Are you crying, Mama?" "I'm not crying," her mother lied, wiping her eyes. "I'm just proud." They embraced quietly, holding each other like two survivors of a long storm. Outside, the compound had already started buzzing. Madame Ijoma stood with folded arms, dressed flamboyantly in gold and red lace, her gel tied like a crown of defiance. She scoffed at every well-wisher. We'll see how long this pity marriage lasts." Her daughter, Neka, clicked her tongue. "Even me we never marry. I no desperate reach like this." They didn't know they were about to witness a day that would shut every mouth. Ngozi expected a small car, maybe a Kiki or a modest Toyota Corolla, to pick her up for the church ceremony. She waited quietly at the gate, holding her mother's hand, but what arrived silenced the entire street. A black Bentley. Blab. It pulled up slowly, followed by a convoy of other luxury cars, white Mercedes, black Jeeps, and a Rolls-Royce Phantom leading the line. The neighbors gathered instantly. "Mogby, who die? No wedding or no governor day come. This can't be for Ngozi. It's a mistake." Even Madame Ijoma stepped back in confusion. "Who invited these people?" The Bentley door opened. A young man in a black suit stepped out and bowed slightly. "Miss Ngozi?" Ngozi blinked. "Yes?" "I'm here to take you to your wedding venue." She looked around. "This must be a mistake. Our church is just nearby. St. Mark's." The man smiled. Sir Emeka gave strict instructions. "You're not going to St. Mark's, Ma. Please enter." Ngozi stood frozen, heart racing. Her mother gently squeezed her hand. "Go, my child. Just trust." As she stepped into the back seat of the Bentley, her gown swishing beside her, Ngozi felt like she had stepped into someone else's life. She glanced out the window and caught the stunned look on her stepmother's face as they drove off. For the first time in years, she smiled. The convoy wove its way through the streets of Lagos, bypassing traffic, escorted by sirens and motorbikes. Ngozi couldn't speak. Her heart pounded as the city flew past her window. Then they turned toward Victoria Island. Her eyes widened. No, this is not possible," she whispered. But it was. The car stopped in front of Eden Royale Grand Hall, one of the most expensive wedding venues in all of Lagos. The glass structure sparkled in the sun, guarded by uniformed security and bustling with luxury guests. Ngozi was gently led out of the car and up the steps. At the entrance, her name greeted her in gold letters on a massive board. "Welcome to the wedding of Ngozi and Emeka, a union of grace and glory." Ngozi's knees nearly gave way. She turned to the usher beside her. "Please, is this a mistake?" "No mistake, Ma," the woman said, beaming. "Today is your day." The doors opened. Ngozi stepped inside and gasped. The hall looked like a dream, walls adorned with white roses and crystal chandeliers. A floral arch lined with soft lights led to a marble altar. A choir in silk robes hummed worship softly in the background. Guests were already seated. Politicians, celebrities, business moguls, people she had only ever seen on TV. Ngozi looked down at her simple dress, overwhelmed. She suddenly felt like a speck in a palace. She clutched her mother's hand, eyes wide. "I'm scared," she whispered. Her mother smiled. "This is your miracle, Ngozi. Don't run from it." And so she walked, slowly about, her sandals clicking gently against the marble floor. The guests turned. Some gasped. Some whispered, "Is that the bride? She's so simple and beautiful." But still, Emeka hadn't arrived. Then came the sound of violins. The doors reopened, and in he walked. Not wheeled, walked, strong, upright, in a white tuxedo, no wheelchair, no crutches. Gasps filled the air. Ngozi froze mid-step. Her hand flew to her mouth. What is happening?" Emeka walked toward the altar with a calm smile on his face and tears in his eyes. When he reached the front, he turned to the guests and said, "Please give me one moment. I owe her, this woman, an explanation." Ngozi's heart pounded in her chest. Her vision blurred. Everything slowed down. He looked at her with love in his eyes and said gently, "My name is Emeka Obidike, and I have something to confess." The grand wedding hall had fallen into a hush. You could hear a pin drop. Hundreds of eyes watched in stunned silence. Journalists slowly raised their cameras. Phones were lifted in trembling hands. Even the violinist paused mid-note. But Ngozi couldn't move. She stood in the center of it all, her breath shallow, her heart pounding like thunder in her chest. Her groom, Emeka, the man she loved, the man she had pushed in a wheelchair through the dusty streets of Surulere, now stood before her. Tall, unaided, whole. She looked into his eyes, searching for answers, for logic, for something familiar. But all she saw was emotion, raw, vulnerable, and deep. He raised a microphone and his voice, calm and clear, filled the hall. "My name is Emeka Obidike, son of Chief and Chief Mrs. Obidike, founder and CEO of Obidike Group, a real estate and construction empire that stretches from Nigeria to the UAE. A gasp rippled through the hall. Ngozi's legs wobbled. He continued, "For years, I lived in the shadows of privilege. Everything was easy. Everything was handed to me until an accident almost paralyzed me and opened my eyes to a world I had never truly seen." He paused. "When I recovered, I decided to find something that had always escaped me. True love. Not the love that comes with a family name. Not the kind that money buys. Not the kind you find on Instagram. But love rooted in kindness, patience, sacrifice." His voice broke slightly. "So I chose to hide. I became the man everyone mocked. The man no woman wanted. The man in a wheelchair." He turned to Ngozi now, his eyes full of tears. "And then I met you." Ngozi's breath caught. "You didn't see a cripple. You didn't ask what I owned. You never pitied me. You treated me with honor. You gave me your time. You gave me respect. You gave me your heart." Tears welled in her eyes. "Even when people mocked you, you stood by me. Even when your own family ridiculed you, you believed in me. You told me I would walk again. And today I do." He stepped closer. "You didn't marry a wheelchair. You married my soul." Ngozi began to cry, unable to hold it in. Silent tears rolled down her cheeks as she looked on at him, at the man she thought she knew, now shining in a truth brighter than anything she imagined. "But that's not all," Emeka said. The audience leaned in. He turned to the guests again. "Today I reveal my name, my strength, my story. But more importantly, I reveal my gratitude." He knelt before Ngozi and took her hand. "In this world of gold diggers, opportunists, and pretenders, you, Ngozi, were a light. You sewed your love like a garment, threaded with loyalty, stitched with faith, and tailored with purity." He reached into his jacket and pulled out a diamond ring, not the simple band she had worn before. "This is your true ring." The crowd gasped. "I am yours, completely, if you'll still have me, not as a cripple, but as a man." The hall stood still. Ngozi, tears flowing, reached for him and nodded. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, Emeka. You're my miracle." The audience erupted in applause. The choir broke into song. Her mother, standing in the crowd, danced with arms in the air, shouting praises to God. And somewhere at the back of the room, Madame Ijeoma slumped in her chair, her mouth wide open, unable to speak. Everything had changed, and yet it had only just begun. The hall transformed into a festival of joy. As a Ngozi and Emeka stood at the altar, bathed in light and surrounded by clapping guests, something shifted in the air. Not just celebration, but redemption. The woman once mocked for loving a man in a wheelchair was now the bride of a billionaire. The choir's harmony soared through the hall, and as Emeka slid the diamond ring onto her finger, tears ran freely down Ngozi's cheeks. Not from shock, but from peace. Deep, holy peace. "I love you," he whispered. "And I love you," she replied. The officiating minister declared them husband and wife, and the hall erupted with thunderous applause. The couple walked hand in hand down the marble aisle. No wheelchair, no whispers, only wonder. At the reception, guests dined like royalty. Journalists swarmed to cover the story. Influencers posted clips captioned, "She chose love and walked into destiny." But not everyone danced. At the far corner of the hall sat Madame Ijeoma, her head bowed. Every sneer she once threw now echoed back at her. Her daughter Nneka quietly slipped away in shame. Meanwhile, Ngozi's mother danced with the choir, surrounded by women who now looked at her with admiration. "Your daughter is a queen," they sang. "God has honored her." Later that night, as fireworks lit the Lagos sky, Emeka pulled Ngozi aside to a quiet balcony. "You're no longer just a tailor," he said. "You're my partner, my crown, my home. You're the queen of a multi-billionaire. Thanks for loving me unconditionally." She smiled. "I was always a queen. I just needed the world to see it." And with that, they kissed under the night sky, and new life had begun, not just for love, but for legacy.